Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica in a continuing series. Is that an analog in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? And today we're doing a Capcom CPS2 setup guide and review because everyone's been asking for this, but I knew the course from Hotega were going to go public soon, so I waited. Earlier than this, you had to be a Patreon member to play with the beta cores, and now that it's public, we're going to be doing a whole setup guide. And make sure you don't skip anything in this. I'm going to show you how to get the cores and games installed on your pocket. And I'm also going to talk a lot about the test menu on these arcade boards because most, if not all, of the options are going to be articulated not outside of the core menu but in the test menu. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But getting Capcom CPS2 and the Analogue Pocket is absolutely spectacular. This is probably my favorite Capcom board of all time. I did have the original hardware, but I recently sold it because MiSTer FPGA kind of filled the need for me. And now we have Analogue Pocket giving us CPS2 on the go. Now to get any of these cores, I do have an updater guide available. I'll leave a link below. But you want to run Pocket Updater and you want to hit Update All. All of these cores are now in the repository, so if you run Pocket Updater, it's going to pull down all of the Hotega cores for the Capcom CPS2, and all of the other assets you're going to need to be able to play these games. If you're not sure how this works, again, that link is in the description below. But once you update everything, if you want to know if it worked, just pop over to OpenFPGA and go to Arcade Multi. All of the CPS2 games are multi-board games, so it's going to appear in this option menu. If you go ahead and go into it and you see CPS2, that means everything is installed correctly. If you don't see CPS2 here, you didn't run the updater correctly or something else went wrong. 99 out of 100 times you should be fine. Go ahead, scroll around, and pick the game you want to play. Just be aware that these are big ROMs and it's going to take a little bit to load. This is in real time. You'll see that little progress bar at the bottom scroll towards the right. So if it's taking a little bit of time to load up the individual game, don't be concerned. Some of these games take like 30 to 45 seconds. Something like Alien vs Predator here is going to be more in the 20-second category. The bigger the ROM, the longer it takes to load. But when we start playing this game, this is an absolutely spectacular implementation of the Capcom CPS2 on the Analogue Pocket. Obviously, Hotega already brought this to MiSTer last year early, but we do have it on the go now, and that's absolutely amazing to see. I have played a metric crap ton of CPS2 games in my time. I owned the hardware for a very long time and I grew up on these games. If there's anything not working correctly, I certainly can't spot it, but the eagle-eyed among you, if you see something in the video, do leave me a comment down below and also tell me what your favorite Capcom CPS2 game is. I would be very curious to know. When I talked about these settings, you need to realize that there's more than one way to do things with the Capcom CPS2. If we go to the core settings menu, we have controls, and these are going to vary by game, so don't think just because you've set the controls in one game, it is going to adhere to all of them. It is each individual and unique for the game you're using. Short of that, you're just basically going to see we have no options whatsoever. But if you hold down the A and Start button, you're going to get into the test menu. And this is where you changed all of the settings on arcade boards when they were in the arcade, and every single Capcom game is going to have this. Just be aware that sometimes you need a second controller plugged in, because to exit any menu on Alien vs Predator, you have to hit Start on player 1 and player 2. So if you get stuck in the test menu, hook up a second controller and go from there. Or something like Hyper Street Fighter 2 here. There's so many different versions of this game, and there's so many different ways to play it. It's obviously one of those classic all-time arcade legendarily good games, but this one here right now can be a little bit bugged because of the difficulty. If you're playing the wrong ROM, you're going to get a situation in which easy is actually the hardest, and we'll go over in a little bit on how to switch up the ROMs for different region variants. But in the test menu, this is where all of the different settings are going to happen. Difficulty, sound, stereo or mono, whether or not you want the track sound on. Some games on by default, some games are off, and then you can switch different game speeds as well. But I know a lot of you that don't have experience with arcade boards are going to wonder how you change those settings. So again, A and Start at the same time will bring you into the test menu, and then from there just hit exit until you get back to the game. It is simple as that, but just remember the test menu does exist, and it is where 99 out of 100 different options are going to be appearing as opposed to the core menu on the actual Pocket. But like I said, once we get into Street Fighter here, it's an excellent implementation in FPGA of the original arcade board. And don't forget, this hardware had Q sound on it. It was a special chip that did a little bit something different with the audio than most boards of its time. So go ahead and listen for like 25 seconds to get a flair for it. I'll be back with more hints and tips on how to do this. Now I did have to turn that audio sample down because I do think that the core or the pocket's a little bit loud over the actual HDMI. Now if you go up into alternatives for the ROMs version, you're going to get all of the different regional releases here. You may need to manually add some of these files to your pocket, but if you want a different region of a specific game, you can go ahead and select it right in here. And again, remember when I said that the controls are game to game dependent and you need to bind or rebind them depending on what game you're playing. If we go into core settings and into controls here, you're now going to see we have 6 buttons we can map. That is because Street Fighter 2 is a 6-button game. So just remember, every single game has a different setting. And unfortunately, I still haven't really found an arcade stick that works with my Analogue Pocket. My Neo Geo Arcade Stick Pro is not recognized by the device or the dock whatsoever. Neither is my Damon Byte USB adapter that I use on my actual full arcade stick build for my Super Gun and other arcade boards. So if you have any recommendations for arcade sticks that you like, leave them down below. I was going to do an 8-bit DOE build, but I decided that maybe I'll wait just a little bit. But honestly, however you decide to control it, this is very close to real hardware. I can't tell any differences whatsoever, and I owned a Capcom CPS 2 multi for many years. Now as far as the controls are concerned and the lag and responsiveness is concerned, I do not detect any noticeable lag in any of the games I have played whatsoever. The only reason I have issues playing the fighting games is because I need that arcade stick. But something like Pro Gear here, a bullet hell shmup from Cave, one of the best games on the Capcom CPS 2 in my opinion. If there was any lag in the controls or any of the responsiveness, you would 100% be able to tell instantaneously. You'll see here on this character, I'm able to get around all of this garbage on screen, getting as close to the bullets as I possibly can, and I'm just doing this on an Xbox Series X D-pad, which means with an arcade stick it would be even better. The performance on this core is so good on the Pocket. That would be expected. Hotego doesn't put anything out that isn't awesome, and this feels basically one-to-one with the implementation you get on MiSTer FPGA, even though it is running on different FPGA hardware. It's just one of those things. It's so much fun to play these games in real time. But I did say that there's different settings in the test menu per game. Now if we jump into the test menu for Pro Gear here, go down to configuration, you're going to see we have different options: system, game, etc, etc. You're going to see that we can change the difficulty here, flip the screen around, whatever you would like to do. Super easy, but be aware that some games actually have additional button settings in the test menu. If you want to have a rapid fire shot that you can just hold down by default, if you switch it to on and then exit the game, you're going to be able to use a third button that didn't work before to have a rapid shot by default. So definitely check the test menu in every single game you're playing, because you'll see here under controls, it does have a mapping for the rapid shot, but until you actually turn it on in the test menu, that button's going to do absolutely nothing in the actual game. Now I don't use the rapid shot whatsoever. I prefer that slow down shot, so I did die here, but just remember, every single test menu is different, and a lot of times there's going to be settings you want to play around with in there. Now something like Street Fighter Alpha 3 here, a game that I played an absolute metric crap ton of back in the day as well with my CPS2 hardware in MiSTer. This feels so close to the original hardware. Again, if there's any differences whatsoever, I cannot detect them. And obviously setting up a Capcom CPS2 with a Super Gun is a very cumbersome experience, so FPGAs definitely become my favorite way to play these games. And now with the dock, I can play them on my television just like my MiSTer, but I can take the Pocket out of the house with me, and now I have the entire Capcom CPS2 library available to play whenever I want. Or something like Vampire Savior, another absolute classic Capcom banger. If you've never played these games before, they're all now available on your Analogue Pocket in a public release. You no longer need to be a Patreon member from Hotego, but he does have a lot of other cores in beta that I will talk about in the future, so it might be something that you think about. Give him $5 a month and you get early access to all of these different things. But again, this is a game I'm very familiar with, and the control responsiveness on a D-pad, I did a much better job here than I did on Street Fighter 2. And again, some absolutely incredible music on this core, including Battle Circuit here. Listen for 20 seconds, and I'll be right back. Sounds exactly like I remember. I just wish that the analog dock wasn't putting out such a high volume on this core and some other cores. I've noticed that it definitely in my headphones feels like it might be 1 to 2 volume settings higher than I would default to, but that is a very small complaint about the audio output of the dock in and of itself. But this is how you play Capcom CPS2 on your Analogue Pocket, how you get all the cores and everything else you need down, how to set up all of the controls in the actual configuration menu, and how to get to the test menu. But if you want to see another tutorial on Pocket, if there's something I haven't haven't done, leave me a comment down below, tell me what it is, and maybe I'll get to it next. But go and play CPS2 on Analogue Pocket. It's a 10 out of 10. I love it, and I think you will too. Bye-bye.